Your experience being with others, both in conversation, in person, online, electronically, however you want to say, you've had this multitude of experiences where you've actually walked with people and you've been present to them in moments of need. What is the experience of being with mean for you, and why is it important, especially at end of life and concerning questions of crises or treatment, or just simply issues of being there for others when they're most vulnerable?
One of the great gifts of my life was having my grandfather in my life. During my high school and university years, he moved in with my family and lived with us from the time he was 89 until he died at age 96. Living with my grandfather was a unique experience because, as we know in Canada, it's not that common to have intergenerational households. But for me, I found this as absolutely formative. And in fact, I find that I still live and grow up with him because of his presence in my life, even though he died in 2015. Now, he was my intellectual sparring partner. We disagreed on many things, but he still completely adored me. And we went on grandfather dates to Italian restaurants. I would put my term papers on his pillow and he would put the newspaper on my pillow. And we had a really warm relationship. And I love the quotation about how grandchildren and grandparents get along so well because they have a common enemy. And so I certainly had a special relationship with my grandfather. Toward the end of my grandfather's life, when he was in hospice, there were certainly times where he said, in fact, "I want to die." And I would visit him and I would see him in distress, and I thought, well, I began to see that it's actually quite natural, it's quite normal for a person nearing the end of life to express feelings of readiness to die. But what's not normal and what must not become natural is capitulating to what is tantamount to some suicidal ideation at the end of life. And so I always said, "I love you, I'm glad you're here." And when I showed up, he didn't want to die anymore. And one thing that moved me so much as a young person, and it moves me every time I have such an experience, is seeing the calendar of an elderly person who is awaiting a visit. So in my grandfather's last weeks, I would enter the room in the hospice and I would see the calendar, and it would be practically empty except for Amanda's visit in large letters with highlighter. And when I went in, that was also very affirming to me, that my visit really counted, that he needed me, and that I could be so looked forward to. That was an overwhelming sense of affirmation as a young person, that my showing up, that my being with, could be a kind of singular event on his calendar. These are some stories that come to my mind.
Excellent, I love it. As you know, we have a being with training, which trains any person, a lay person in the community that's is secular, has a belief system or background, to go out and actually visit effectively. It's very practical, it's hands-on, it's only 4 hours in training. It can be done in person or online. We recommend it to anyone for simply a way to go out and be an effective volunteer and visitor. What's your takeaway from that? Do you think this is a valuable opportunity for most people to actually engage in Canada?
During the pandemic, I was able to be matched with a senior who I had actually never met before, Don, an 89-year-old gentleman, and we began having phone calls every week. This was honestly one of the most important things for my own mental health throughout the pandemic, though I could not have known. We had these weekly calls, and at first I thought, I'm volunteering, I'm doing a good deed, but I quickly realized that I needed him, and that he was way more hopeful and upbeat than I often was. One of the things that touched me most when I would have these phone calls with Don is I remember once when he began a phone call and he said, "How are you doing?" And I quickly told him all about the political situation on Parliament Hill and how much work I had to do and how busy I was. And at the end of 5 minutes he said, "And how are you?" And I was so touched. And I realized I had completely missed his interest at that human level, but then so moved that he genuinely wanted to know. And so we all have the capacity to go out of ourselves and to be present to one another. And there's something very special when that person is a stranger or a neighbor. I truly believe that we ought to have a more expansive vision of family. Whatever our own family situation may be, we are called to be family to others, and we all have experiences in our lives of some estrangement, of some difficulty in relationships, and I think that too can propel us to go and strike up new relationships so that we can be there for each other in times when we need the extra support. So definitely passionate about promoting a more expansive view of family, and I think that's something that can appeal to everyone, whatever your background, whatever your tradition, whatever your walk of life.
Excellent, I agree. Compassion Communicare is starting also a calling service for seniors, and it's a practical way for volunteers who will be trained to support Canadians across Canada, and a way for seniors to access a community of hope that will rally around them on the phone, perhaps even virtually via Zoom. What would you say to a person who's interested in volunteering in this service, or for a senior to be able to receive calls of this type?
One thing that I've learned in my experience is that you don't need an agenda, and it's best if you don't have one. Simply planning a call is enough. There will be plenty to talk about. It won't take long. And so be confident that without any prerogatives, without any set meeting around which the discussion centers, you can just have a heart-to-heart conversation, and that is going to be more beautiful and surprising than you could actually imagine.
Beautiful. Well said.
Okay.
Thank you.